So many issues that affect everyone in this room, but we really do only have 30 minutes, and that's not a lot of time because today we're going to attempt to translate all your answers into 27 different languages. So let's just get started. I thought just to get us warmed up and to practice this, I will introduce the candidates, and I'm going to ask you if you would just say a brief 15-second maximum welcome. And we will practice and make sure that gets translated. Okay. Standing immediately to my right is Jay Inslee. He's the incumbent governor running for re-election as a Democrat. He served in Congress from Eastern Washington, then moved to Western Washington, where he served another 14 years in Congress before being elected governor 4 years ago. Governor, would you give a brief 15-second introduction?
Thank you. This is an honor to be here. By way of introduction, I am a candidate who today was endorsed by the Asian Pacific Islander Americans for Civic Empowerment. I am proud and appreciative of that endorsement. And before I say anything else, could we have a round of applause for the leadership of Ruth Wu and Uncle Bob Santos, what they've done for the state of Washington. Thank you.
Okay, we'll practice this. Translators, I'm going to give you 15 seconds to please translate the introduction from Governor Jay Inslee. Okay, standing beside Governor Inslee is Bill Bryant. He is the Republican candidate for governor. He runs a company that helps farmers export their goods and crops to other countries, and he has been serving on the Port of Seattle Commission for many years. Mr. Bryant, please give a brief 15-second introduction.
Well, like the governor, I really feel this is an honor today to begin to have a conversation with you and to be able to share some of my thoughts with all of you. Some of you I've known for years, some of you I'm just getting to know, but I really appreciate you giving me this opportunity to share my feelings on many important issues with you today.
Okay, translators, 15 seconds. All right, we are going to get started with that. I am going to ask a series of questions that have come from this audience and from these groups that are issues that are concerning to them. We're going to give each of you 90 seconds to respond. So we'll have one person respond for 90 seconds. As you're responding, keep in mind we're going to be very diligent on the clock. Van is here with her time cards. And she also, if you don't pay attention to her, she has the gong. She will also use that if she doesn't like your answer. No, I'm kidding. And then we will give our translators 90 seconds to translate the answer. So let's begin with one of the issues that is very significant in the news these days, and that's the environment. Governor Inslee, you proposed a carbon tax. Other lawmakers did not support it, but this fall voters will see Initiative 732, which would impose a carbon tax on fossil fuels. Mr. Bryant, you describe yourself as a conservationist, but you have caution about who ends up paying for some of these environmental taxes. In that context, the people in this room have many concerns about changes in climate, rising waters in the Pacific Islands, severe typhoons in the Philippines and throughout Asia, and here in the Northwest, climate changes that affect, for example, communities that rely on fishing. So, number one, are there policies such as a carbon tax that you would support? And specifically, what is your take on climate change and how policies affect low-income communities and communities of color? We did a coin toss before the event, and Mr. Bryant, please go first.
Thank you, Robert. This is a very important issue to all of us. I know that climate change is affecting many communities throughout Asia and the Pacific Islands. It's affecting where I grew up and in my community. I grew up in a very small community village over on the Olympic Peninsula in Hoodsport, and I grew up hiking and climbing in the Olympic Mountains. And when I go back to those mountains now, I can see the effect of climate change on that ecosystem. I believe in climate change, and I believe that humans contribute to it. And that's why when I was at the Port of Seattle, I pushed forward with a number of measures to reduce our footprint, our carbon footprint. We were the first airport to have a greenhouse gas emissions inventory so we could reduce the carbon emissions at SeaTac Airport. We had facilities so that the cruise ships and the airplanes could plug into the electrical grid so they wouldn't be burning fossil fuels at berth or at the gates. We worked to make sure that the fleet was transitioned to natural gas and to electricity. And along with Alaska Airlines and Boeing and Washington State University, we are helping pioneer the first commercially viable aviation biofuel. And if we could figure out how to come up with a biofuel to put into our airplanes, we could significantly reduce carbon emissions on this planet. I want to move forward on tangible measures that help us reduce our carbon emissions. But I do not, and this is where I disagree with the governor, I do not want to go forward with proposals that could end up costing us middle-class jobs and not improve the environment one bit.
Governor Inslee.
Should we entertain the
Oh,
interpretation?
I'm sorry. My apologies. My apologies. We're going to give translators 90 seconds. Thank you for catching me
I
on
wanna
that.
make sure my
I don't want to
voice-
have two answers that they have to do. Translators, 90 seconds.
그래서 환경이 많이 변한 걸 알고 있습니다. 그리고 사람들이 이 환경 기후 변화 때문에 영향을 받는 것도 알고 있습니다. 제가 시애틀 항만청에 커미셔너로 있으면서 여기에 그거를 해결하는 방법에 돈이 많이 들어가지 않게끔 노력하고 있습니다. 그런 방법에는 지금 가스 그거 쓰는 것보다는 전기로 바꾸기도 하고 또 내추럴 가스를 쓰게 해서 전기를 만들게 합니다. 그런 식으로 여러 가지로 코스트를 낮추고 있습니다.
Okay. Governor Inslee, climate change.
One of the things I love about the APIC community is that this community is so committed to the health and well-being of their children and their grandchildren and their great-grandchildren. And they are committed to their relatives in the Marshall Islands and Bangladesh and low-lying areas that are going to be swallowed by rising oceans if we do not defeat climate change. And I know that the APAC community cares about the health of our children that are being affected by pollution. So our state that believes in science and believes in technology needs to lead the world in adopting measures to reduce carbon pollution and protect our children and our grandchildren. And I am the only candidate for governor who has both experience reducing carbon pollution and policy proposals to reduce carbon pollution to protect our children. Here's what we need to do. We need to continue to build businesses, and we're doing research at the University of Washington to do that in clean energy. We need to help consumers get access to clean products. And today I can tell you something very significant. All of our children and all of our grandchildren, as of today, have a new protection against carbon pollution, which is endangering their health. And that's a rule that our Department of Ecology promulgated today, which will protect our carbon pollution and reduce the threat of climate change and the threats to our fisheries from ocean acidification. Thank you.
Translators, 90 seconds.
Cháu và cái điều rất là quan tâm giảm tất cả những khí thải, máy bay phải giảm khí, xe hơi chạy cũng phải giảm cái khí, và các công ty xí nghiệp, các nhà máy cũng đừng có thải khói ra nhiều. Làm như thế là chúng ta sẽ giữ được cái không khí ta nó tránh không phải đời chúng ta mà còn và trường học Washington hiện thời bây giờ đang có những cái chương trình mà tìm ra những cái loại nhiên liệu sạch tránh không có thải ra nhiều khí carbon trong việc làm hại
동해가 나고 있는데 이런 것이 다 탄소와 영향이 돼 있기 때문에 그러한 조치를 하는 거고 나는 주지사로서 처음으로 이 탄소 문제에 관한 이슈를 중요하게 생각하고 있는 사람입니다. 또 나는 거기에 대한 충분한 경험이 있는 오직 주지사입니다.
Okay. Gentlemen, in November, voters will be selecting a governor. They'll also be seeing a handful of initiatives on the ballot. One of them, as you know, is I-1433, which would raise the state's minimum wage from the current $9.47 an hour to $13.50 by the year 2020. It would also require employers to offer sick leave. We have seen a number of cities pass their own higher minimum wage. So I'm wondering, what is your position on these cities raising their own minimum wage, and on specifically I-1433, which would raise the minimum wage statewide? Governor Inslee, we'll begin with you.
Thank you. One thing I know for sure, the APEC community has many people, many professions, physicians, doctors, computer scientists, but it also has people working in our restaurants, in our hospitals, in our trucking industries. And here's what I know for sure about these hardworking people. They cannot live today on the state's minimum wage of $9.40 an hour. We need to raise our statewide minimum wage, and I am fully supportive of Initiative 1433. And here's why. Initiative 1433 will give working people a chance to have a roof over their head and food on the table. And there is nowhere in this state where you can do that for today's minimum wage of $9.47. And you can't do that, you can't be successful unless we raise it. And this will eventually raise it to $13.50. Now here's what I believe. I believe people in Spokane, and Ellensburg, and Pasco, and Bellingham, and Tacoma, in Seattle have one thing in common. They all ought to make $13.50 an hour in the next couple of years so that they can support their children. And if cities want to raise their minimum wage because they're doing very well above that, we should allow them to do it. It is time to give our families a living wage. I'm the guy who's going to work to do that.
Translators, you have 90 seconds. Okay. Mr. Bryant, your thoughts on the minimum wage statewide and Initiative 1433?
Well, the governor and I share an interest in making sure that people who are working 40 hours a week are earning enough to put a roof over their head and to take care of their kids. I'll tell you, when my mom and dad were starting out and we were living in that small town in Hoodsport, Dad was a teacher but didn't make very much teaching on the Snohomish reservation, so he had a job on Saturdays and at the prison in Shelton. And Mom, and she was a waitress over at the Alderbrook Inn. And I can remember a lot of nights when Dad would come home after working 1 or 2 jobs, beat tired, just in time for Mom to leave to go to work. And I really hated those nights when the family wasn't together. I want to change the rules so that we have increased fairness and opportunity for families all across Washington State. My only concern is that as we move around Washington State, we realize that there are very different levels of economy. And I'm afraid if we take the minimum wage increase to $13.50 all across the state, in communities where the cost of living is less than Seattle, we could actually inflict some harm on folks. When I was a commissioner, I voted to raise the minimum wage for workers at SeaTac Airport to over $15 by 2017. And that made sense for those jobs and in King County, given King County's cost of living. But the cost of living is very different in different parts of our state. And I'm afraid if we raise the minimum wage too quickly based on King County's cost of living, we're going to end up having some people in small towns with their hours cut or their benefits cut or they'll lose their job entirely. And I want to take action that helps people, not hurts the people we're trying to help.
Translators, 90 seconds.
Tôi nhớ là gia đình ông sống trong cái thành phố nhỏ, có một giáo viên dành hết sức lực mà không có tiền. Bây giờ ông muốn được tăng lên, ví dụ như tăng lên trong nuôi thị trường phường tăng lên cho đến 2017 tăng đột thì như thế sẽ không có đủ cái khả năng tăng một lần tăng nhiều lần. Với lại cái mức sống cái vùng nó khác nhau, ở King County cái mức sống nó khác nhau, ở phía Tech nó khác nhau, nó phải có một cái lộ trình thay đổi theo từng cái nơi sống và từng cái điều kiện sống của những cái thành phố, chứ không phải là đổ đồng hết toàn bộ trên mặt.
이것이 도움이 되는 것보다는 그걸로 인해서 피해를 보는 사람도 많기 때문에 그것은 어떻게 조정하는가 되지 않겠습니까?
Very well. A question about education. The Washington State Supreme Court has said that the state has failed to live up to its constitutional duty to fund fully basic education. And it's pretty clear lawmakers will have to find more money in the next 2 years. What is your plan to find that money? Would you agree to any cuts in health, human services, or housing programs in a shift to fund education? And would you, under any circumstances, support new taxes, fees, or revenue to pay for education? Mr. Bryant?
Thank you. Fixing our education system so that every kid has an equal chance to get ahead is the primary reason I'm running for governor. I grew up in a small town in the Olympic Peninsula, went to school on the Snohomish Reservation. And I know that at that time we were funding education pretty well across the state, and so I got a good public education. But as I move across the state today, I realize that that's not true anymore. That the quality of education kids get depends too much on their zip code and their school district, on where they live. If they live in a rich school district, well then yeah, they can pass levies and the parents can have extra fundraisers and those kids are going to have access to great educational programs. But a lot of kids in more disadvantaged neighborhoods or in rural communities don't have access to those programs. And that's not only unconstitutional, ladies and gentlemen, it's morally wrong. So the first thing we need to do is focus on equity. And we need to create a new tax mechanism so that the state takes over most of the responsibility that has been assumed by the local school districts and make sure that we are spending money equitably. Right now we're spending over $12,000 per student in Washington State, over the national average. But not every student's getting $12,000 spent on them. And in the Bryant administration, we are going to ensure that every kid equitably has an equal chance to get ahead by coming up with a funding mechanism that treats all kids equally.
And just in your last 50 seconds, can you clarify, would you support any cuts to other
No,
services?
and I
or
believe
any
that
new taxes?
Thank you, Robert. I was looking at Van down there and being careful.
Just give me a 50.
But no, we're going to need to spend more on education. Right now we're spending about 48%. I want to get that over 50% of the budget on education. But we can do that through revenue growth. We do not, and I do not support taking it out on social programs.
Okay, translators, 90 seconds.
모든 아이들은 공정하게, 적절하게 똑같은 혜택을 받을 기본 교육을 받을 수 있어야 된다고
Governor, your plan on education? Would you agree to any cuts to health, housing, and human services programs? And would you support any new taxes?
In fact, I stopped cuts to our housing programs, to our programs that help people in dual language. I stopped those cuts because people in this APEC community and other communities need to have a fair shake so they can get into employment. so they can get their feet on the ground. And I stopped that when I became governor. And I intend to stop those cuts as well. And here's why. I have seen such great progress we've made in the education of our children. In the last week, I've been in Kent, in Spokane, looking at the dual language programs that help children whose first language is not English. And look what we've accomplished while I've been governor. 7,000 more kids are going to have early childhood education. I saw that in Spokane yesterday. Every single child of this and every other community is going to have access to kindergarten. Isn't that a great thing? We are reducing class sizes so teachers have a better shot with smaller class sizes. We have finally given our hardworking teachers a long overdue and reasonable pay increase, with more to come. And with a bipartisan success, we've reduced our college tuition for every single student in our public schools. We have put $5.5 billion more money, the largest new investment in the history of the state of Washington while I've been governor. We've got to continue making that effort because we cannot allow poverty to be destiny. And we cannot allow the Republican Party to cut funding for homelessness programs. We cannot allow that. And the day before yesterday, Bill said he wasn't even aware of the way we fund homelessness programs. I think we got to take care of this problem, and I intend to do so. Thank you.
And Governor, real quickly, a follow-up on that, in terms of new taxes to pay for education?
We have, in the past, we have grown robust economic growth. We've closed a couple loopholes, and we've done great things for education.
So you would not support it, new tax?
As I said, I've been governor now. You don't have to wonder what I'm saying. You can look what I'm doing. And what we are doing is we are growing the economy. We have 250,000 more jobs. And as a result, we've been able to grow revenue for our schools. We've also closed a couple corporate loopholes. Now let me tell you this, I disagree with my opponent on this. I think it's better to close the corporate loophole that's giving unnecessary millions of dollars to the oil and gas industry and put that money into early education for our kids.
I'm going to let our translators go for it. I'll give you just a little more, 90 seconds for our translators.
Ông nói là trong suốt cái thời gian mà ông mới làm ban ngày cho tới giờ thì quý vị có thể thấy tận mắt là ông đã làm cái việc gì. Ví dụ như ông đã chỉ đạo 5 tỷ, hơn 5 tỷ cho vấn đề giáo dục và ông không có đồng ý tăng thuế mà lấy cái tiền của quỹ người già, lấy cái tiền của quỹ trợ cấp những nhà nào trong người nghèo, người vô gia cư để mà dùng tiền mà tài trợ trong cái giáo dục. Cái việc đó làm mất cái cân bằng.
To immigration, which is a big issue this election year. Under federal law, there are thousands of immigrants who are not eligible for federally funded food programs such as SNAP or health insurance based on their citizenship status. But in Washington state, these immigrants who do not meet federal requirements may still be eligible for programs funded by the state, such as the state food assistance or naturalization programs or the limited English proficiency pathway. Should the state of Washington continue funding these programs, given the budget pressures to fund education? Do you see any of these programs being potentially cut or eligibility requirements restricted in some way? Governor Inslee.
We should continue these programs, and I'll tell you why. When you look at the success of the state of Washington, we got a lot of reasons to feel rich natural bounty, fields, farms. But we've got a richness here, which is the immigrant community that has helped build the state of Washington. We have built Microsoft, Boeing. When you go to these places, you know what you see? People who came here one time with not a dime in their pocket, who maybe learned to speak English, maybe got a small degree of assistance, and now are building the best technology in the world. We should continue these programs, and I have fought and protected these programs. I've talked to the Marshallese community about how important our state food assistant grant program is. We've got to make sure that our limited English proficiency program continues to be protected and funded. We've got to get dual language, so we're teaching kids right now. I've been in classes in the last 2 weeks where kids are learning at the same time in Spanish and English, at the same time in Chinese and English. These programs build the economy in the state of Washington. And I will also say this, it is a moment where all of us need to stand up and say we should remain a country and a state we have always been. We have never shut our doors to immigrants or refugees. We should not start shutting our doors to refugees from Syria or anyone else. We should keep the doors open in this great country to what has helped build this great country, the immigrant community. Thank you.
Translators, 90 seconds. Very well, Mr. Bryant.
Well, like the governor, I want to make sure that our state and our country remains open to immigrants and refugees from around the world. We are a nation that is strong because of our diversity, because we have welcomed people from all corners of the planet and from all cultures around the earth. I'll tell you, I experienced this firsthand when I was in high school, how important it is for America to be a place of refuge for those who are escaping persecution. In the 1970s, when I was in high school, I helped tutor some people who had just been released from a refugee camp in Thailand. They were Vietnamese and they were coming to America to start a new life. And I helped teach them English and help them get settled into high school in the United States. And I gotta tell you, I learned more from them than I could have ever have taught them. In my career, I've been fortunate to travel throughout Asia and the Pacific Islands working on international trade issues related to food. And I've talked to the business people there and people in the Asian and Pacific Island community here. And we know how important the cultural ties are between us. And we need to do everything to strengthen that. Undermining the social net for people who are coming here just to start a new life or to escape persecution would not be moving us towards the people and the country we want to be. And also it would just be short-sighted and it would be creating further problems down the road. People who are coming here need to have the social safety net that allows them to get a strong start and that catches them when they might fall or trip. And I will defend that safety net.
Translators, 90 seconds.
Very interesting, right? The groups.
Okay, gentlemen, indulge me in one last thing. The APA community has many priorities. Among them, let me just cite a few: police accountability, criminal justice reform, comprehensive immigration reform, a state that is welcoming to refugees and immigrants of all religions, Voting Rights Act, affordable housing, eliminating homelessness, eliminating the achievement gap in K-12 education, capital projects such as the Asia Pacific Cultural Center, healthcare coverage for people from the Marshall Islands, and small business concerns. I'm going to give you 45 seconds each, just to wrap it up. Pick an issue if you want, or if you want to rebut something that was said today, but wrap it up. I'll give you each 45 seconds. Mr. Bryant, go ahead, and we'll wrap it up.
Thank you very much. You know, 24 years ago, I moved from Yakima to Seattle, and in my basement, with just a phone and a fax machine, started my company, trying to do international trade work with food and agriculture around the world. And it was just me, a phone, a fax, and a lot of ideas. And over the last 24 years, I've been able to build this small company into a company that now has projects in about 20 to 30 countries around the world. And that has given me a full appreciation for how hard it is to set up a company and to build it and to keep it growing. And people who are concerned about small business, in me, will have a governor who gets it because I've lived it. We also have a governor who understands that I would never have had that chance unless I got a good public education. And it was because I had that public education I was able to exceed where my parents had been. And that's a dream that I want to preserve for every kid in Washington State.
And translators, we'll give you 45 seconds.
25년 전에 제가 야키마에 많은 아이디어가 많고 비즈니스가 있고 25년 이후에 우리가
Như vậy cái ấn hiệu cái bước khởi đầu của người nhập cư khi mới từ nước khác đến lập ra một cái công ty nhỏ nhỏ.
두 번째는 아이들의 공공 교육이 굉장히 중요하다고 생각합니다. 저희 부모님이 저를 키웠듯이 제가 공공 교육을 바꿔주라고 모든 워싱턴의 모든 제가 주지사가 되면은 모든 아이들이 공공 교육을 적절하게 평등하게 받을 수 있게 하고 싶습니다.
Okay. Governor Inslee, 45 seconds. Pick one of those issues I listed, or anything you wish to wrap it up.
Well, I believe the APAC community deserves more than happy talk. I believe the APAC community deserves action. And I believe in action. I'm the candidate who's taken action on health care. We're 750,000 Washingtonians, including many in this community, finally have health insurance. I'm the candidate who believes we need action on minimum wage. I'm the only candidate standing here who's actually proposed raising the minimum wage with specific dollar terms. I'm a candidate who believes the APAC kids and grandkids deserve protection against pollution. And I'm the candidate who has proposed specific action in this regard. I'm the candidate who believes we should take action against discrimination in all forms, and I've stood up against. I'm the candidate who believes we need action against gun violence. We should not allow our children on Rainier Avenue or Martin Luther King Avenue or anywhere else be subject to untrammeled gun violence. I believe in action. I'd be honored to your vote. Before we go, can we have a round of applause for our interpreters for their great work? Thank you very much.
And for our interpreters, we'll give you one more 45 seconds.
모든 아이들이 지금 người đưa ra những sáng kiến đầu tiên về tăng lương, về vấn đề giảm phụ phí, về vấn đề trong giáo dục để giúp đỡ cho những người mà mới 최저임금이 올라가야 된다고
cả cái việc đó là chính những cái người là chính người là chính mình đã thấy cái và những cái việc đó nó rất là
요새 애들이 아이들의 총기 사고가 많아요. 이런 조절해야 된다고 생각하고 우리의 자손과 자식들의 건강을 위해서 건강보험이 잘 지켜져야 된다고 생각하고요. 그다음에 공해로부터 우리의 자손과 손자와 아이들을 보호해야 된다고 생각합니다. 그래서 아트리는 말로만 이런 얘기를 하는 게 아니라 직접 행동으로 보여주는
Okay, gentlemen, we kept you 2 minutes longer than promised, but we want to thank you very much. Let's give both our candidates a round of applause for stopping by today. We very much appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And remember to vote.